Let's talk about the fundamental lie at the heart of your financial plan. I'm Sebastian Elwell, founder of Switchfoot Wealth Limited. I'm a chartered financial planner, a full member of STEP, the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. I'm an advisory board member of SOLA, the Society of Later Life Advisors, and the Personal Finance Society's Retirement and Later Life Specialist of the Year 2020. COP26 is over, pledges have been made, ambitions watered down, and the politicians have all gone home in their private jets. Back to life as normal. But what have they accomplished? Well, it seems like, if we're lucky, we're on course for a world that is 2.4 degrees C warmer than pre-industrial levels. But what does that mean for you and your retirement plan? Well, the truth is, we don't know. We're moving to global average temperatures that have never been experienced by any human. What we do know is that it exposes to the point of extreme farce the lie at the heart of your financial plan. A financial plan is a model of your possible financial future. It takes into account your starting point, everything that you own, everything that you owe, everything you earn, and everything you spend. It then projects these numbers forwards into the future based on reasonable and reasoned assumptions. And here's where your financial plan is almost certainly wrong. All of the assumptions which have been carefully reasoned by your financial planner are based on a steady state world. And that is a category error. We need to appreciate that we're not in a steady state world anymore. The climate is changing so fast now that severe impacts will be felt over the next 3 decades. And the rule book for your financial plan needs to be completely rewritten. None of the assumptions in your plan are reasonable in a changing climate. So let's think about some of the assumptions we would typically make for, say, a 40-year-old planning for retirement. Somebody like me. The first, and this is pretty fundamental, is lifespan. We typically model a financial plan to age 100. This is based on the apparent increase in life expectancy from improved medical science and projecting forwards. Reasonable in a steady state world. But in a 2.4 degree world, things look radically different. The heat wave in France in 2003 was estimated to kill 15,000 people and 75,000 people more widely across Europe, mostly older people. And that is going to seem like a really tame year in a 2.4 degree world. Models expect these heat waves here in the UK frequently. Tropical diseases will move to higher latitudes. Agricultural production will face dramatic yield reductions, combined with a larger forecasted global population, and years when harvests are simply not possible at all due to heat waves crossing the thermal tolerance of our crops. We could see a return to endemic hunger, globally and here in the UK. All these things combine to make increased longevity look like a naive fantasy. Inflation. In a stable state world, we typically make a central assumption for inflation in line with, say, Bank of England forecasts. Perhaps we put in a 2.5% per year as a typical inflationary assumption. In a 2.4 degree C scenario, food shocks and water shortages could see dramatic price rises for basic staples, blowing a hole in your core budget. What about property? If you're lucky enough to have a property in the right location, relatively protected from the extreme weather, the hurricanes, the flash floods, the rising sea levels, or the river flooding that can be expected, then perhaps you can count on greater asset price inflation. But if your property's in the wrong place, then we should be making an assumption to amortise the value of your property over its remaining useful life. How many people have bought new houses in a floodplain but expect to still be living there in, say, 2050? If they do somehow manage to protect their property, massive costs for mitigation measures and perhaps complete lack of insurability should be costs factored into the financial plan. What about growth assumptions? We've gotten used to generally increasing GDP, and we make long-term assumptions about economic growth. These completely break down in a 2.4 degree C world. Huge swathes of the planet become functionally uninhabitable, destroying the global middle class and turning them into climate refugees. What should the return on equity be under these scenarios? It seems almost offensive to make these economic forecasts. Most financial plans include making provision for future generations. At a 2.4 degree C world, we will likely have triggered carbon feedbacks. I'm talking about the melting of glaciers and polar ice, which at the moment reflects huge amount of heat back into space. As it melts, more heat is absorbed by the oceans, speeding up the warming process. Permafrost melting, releasing the equivalent of billions of tons of CO2 into the atmosphere, further increasing warming. Forests bursting into mighty conflagrations. We may have already unleashed a series of events that will ultimately lead to the extinction of human life within a few generations. What's the point of intergenerational planning if there are no future generations? In a 2.4 degrees C world, it is a reasonable assumption that the current baby boomer generation will be the last generation to achieve later life, putting later life advisors like me out of business. Guess that'll be the least of my worries. Is there hope? There's always hope. And I see that hope in the power of sustainable investing. When you build two plans for a client, one makes reasonable assumptions for a 1.5 degree C world and the other reasonable assumptions for a 2.4 degree C world, then it becomes obvious that your financial interests are aligned with doing everything you can to avert the 2.4 degree C scenario. So where does that hope reside? It's not with the politicians. They've let us down. We've been holding the COP, the Conference of the Parties, since the 1990s, and the only thing that matters is that the atmospheric concentration of CO2 is accelerating and not declining. If we're to save your financial plan, then you need to use what power you have, and that power is more than you might realise. According to a study published in the Financial Times, for every £100,000 invested in a sustainable portfolio, it's like taking 5 or 6 cars off the road each year. What's more, we believe that as the effects of climate change are felt with increasing ferocity over time, the pressure to switch out of dirty, unsustainable investments and investing in the solutions will grow, giving you a better chance of making good returns. If you want to change your financial plan, it starts by making your investment strategy sustainable.